Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one's going to be for K410 Operation Beifong. And this is a very good episode. I think it definitely is one of Book 4's better episodes. Because it takes a little bit of a side plot. There's not much going on with, I suppose, what is really the main plot, but I suppose they sort of end up linking this into the main plot. Instead of just being a rescue mission, it ends up kind of incorporating some of the main stuff into things with like Kuvira's Yuli. But it works because they go for a plot thread that's worked for basically as long as they've covered it. Since middle of book 3, you know, Metal Clan Old Wounds, the Lin-Su issue, Lin's issues with her family, that's been a good plot thread, and they've left open that her issues with her mother, Toph, are still there, and that's what they address here. Plus, you have this being kind of Bolin's like key redemption episode, Opal getting a little bit more of a spotlight. It's a very good episode. I think it's only really let down by the pretty confusing Korra with the spirit scene, which at the time seemed like okay, that's what they're going for, but now just feels like, given that the comics have sort of addressed it a little bit, what are we doing with that? So we'll start there. We'll start with the Korra trying to get the help from the spirits to defend the city that they both live in. I think she pleads her case to them really, really well. She comments about how she's opened the portals again, she's allowed humans and spirits to live together, which has been the case for the past little bit. It's just, you know, what's keeping the spirits from connecting with spirits in the way that, you know, there's a camaraderie between the two. In that I think clearly some humans are willing to do that, but they just interpret it as like, oh, you want to use this as a weapon, and it's like, not really. It's just like, if you are living in a human place and there's an attack coming, like, you really just like abandon it. Like potential humans who you've been friends with, you just, oh, sorry, I'll be back when this is all done. Really? Just leave me to kind of try and defend my own home? The idea that they seem to just want to live in the human world but not actually like care enough to protect it, it makes the spirits look terrible. And they try to frame it, I don't know if it's meant to be the writing or this spirit, this dragon spirit that speaks for them, is meant to be the one. He's meant to be sort of out of line in what he says, but it feels like they're just completely making the spirits look like the bad guys in this situation. Like, to try and turn this around on Korra, it's just like, if this is the writers, it feels sort of tone deaf to what the entire human spirit conflict arc has sort of been about. If it's just meant to be this character, then we're still waiting for some sort of a kind of resolution, him to change his mind on this. You know, the end result is just that they refuse to help, and so the humans have to help themselves, and the spirits aren't actually going to be a factor in all of this. And I think this is where the setup for this arc sort of fails a little bit, in that, like, Korra points out that, like, you know, she was using the spirit vine weapons. I'm sure that part of the reason you know what's happening and are annoyed about this is because of what Kuvira's been doing. And they don't want to really do anything to stop that. They're just like, oh yeah, fine, we'll just stay out of this. You can take our spirit vines, we'll just leave this the physical world again. It's like, okay, I get humans are doing all of this stuff, but like, really? And then Korra like points out that like, oh, you worked for Unalaq, and she's just like, yeah, he kind of took us over, and it's just like, and there's no like apology for that or anything like that. There's no real attempt to like, okay, we'll repay you for that one or anything like that. It's just like, no, that's not our fault. Unalaq took us over. We couldn't do anything. It's like, okay. And then he tries to turn it around like, oh, that's what you're trying to do what Kuvira's doing, and it just doesn't really work, and felt like it felt like an easy way to get the spirits out of the situation and remove what was one of the series' more kind of complex like issues, the human spirit conflict. Not to say like it's terrible that they did that, but just book 2, end of book 2, is about the human spirit conflict and presenting this idea that the world is going to change, the spirits are going to be back in play again. And they haven't really addressed it. There's been like, okay, throughout like book 3, you see the spirits are there, and it seems like for the most part there's a little bit of like, they're sort of a nuisance, you know, a little bit of like issue, but nothing like the world has been torn apart because Korra made this decision. Similarly in book 4, they basically say that the Republic City sort of become at least half of it sort of become like a spirit kind of habitat, and it's pretty peaceful. And then this presents the idea of like, oh yeah, that's fine in peaceful times, but then when conflict happens, there's always going to be conflict. They just abandon things, and there needs to be some sort of middle ground, and I assume it's going to have to be one of Korra's bigger missions as the Avatar to fix this. But I've sort of begun to lose confidence in the writers being aware of what is, I suppose, how I suppose the fans view this kind of conflict. And for me, it's a case of like, everything they're presenting to me is them trying to vilify humans, when I think the spirits are the ones who actually need to like do something good to redeem themselves in a way to humans. That I feel the spirits are kind of more the bad guys in kind of the overall situation, in terms of at least they're trying, whereas the spirits just feel like utterly unattached to anything. But that's that side of things, and it's just like, okay, Asami and Varric are working on these kind of dragonfly hummingbird suits. They don't want to use spirit bind weapons to counter Kuvira, because that makes sense, but Raiko does. And again, you just see that like he still wants to be overly aggressive when he decides to make a move, but then oftentimes he won't even make a move. So, you know, Raiko just continues to be sort of frustrating as a character. So yeah, moving into the main plot, the Earthbender, Metalbender stuff. I really like it. They introduced Toph almost immediately. They established the domes have been taken down since, and they don't know what's going on with them. Toph comes in, explains that you won't find them in there. They've been taken to a, you know, prison camp a little bit away from here. Bolin explains that he knows where they are, and we get basically the reunion of these characters and see that, okay, the dynamic that's going to be happening here is that Bolin is the Toph fanboy. Like Opal is just happy to see her grandmother again, and Lin obviously has the issues with Toph. And it's really interesting because once we get into the issues between Toph and Lin, you see the problem. Toph, in an even bigger way than Sue, presenting like almost a bigger issue than with Sue, has super moved past what's happened, and I think is much more dismissive about it than Sue. Sue is kind of like, you know, I've changed since then. I think that's in the past. We've addressed that, but you know, wasn't maybe very caring about Lin's feelings. Here, if it really does feel like Toph doesn't care. She's just kind of like, okay, say your angry piece and let's get past this. You know, let's just be, you know, calm and relaxed about this. I've got past my issues, you get past yours. Let's just do this right now. And it's a lack of, it feels like it's a big lack of caring. Like, Bolin asks the question that like is apparently been like never asked, and they don't fully say that like Lin, like this moment is Lin also finding out along with us who her father is, but just the fact that like it's explained to us that the issue here is that Bolin asks this question, Toph gives him the answer, and then it's basically said that Toph would never talk about Kanto to Lin ever. That's a huge issue. That like she just suddenly opens up to this random person she's just met who asked the question, and then Lin, who's kind of been through so much about the fact that she doesn't have a father, would want to know about this, has just been ignored when wanting to know about this. It's a huge frustrating point from her, and you absolutely get why she is so angry at Toph about this, and you really like do feel like, wow, like Toph, I know like the sort of character that she is. She's not the one to get overly kind of, you know, heavily emotional about these type of things, but this is harsh, and you do see that Lin's word, when Lin just lets loose at Toph, you can see that it does really affect Toph. As much as Toph later says, you know, if that's how you feel, then fine, once you're happy. she is affected by Lynn's harsh words, but it's also a case of, you know, Lynn just wanting Toph to some degree admit that there were problems. And that's all that there really needs to be. And the ultimate resolution by the end of the episode, I think, works while still acknowledging that, like, it's sort of an issue that you can't just resolve in an episode. They basically get to a point where, like, okay, we'll talk again, I don't hate you, but it's not fully past this. I can't just get fully past this just because we've had this kind of meetup. And I like that. It leaves potential for, like, Lynn and Toph to have scenes into the future, her to potentially talk about, like, Toph's own issues growing up, and why, like, she has, like, 2 daughters with 2 different men, and why neither of those are in either of the girls' lives. That sort of questions, and I think just explaining that to them, because it has had an impact on their lives. You can take it the way that Lynn is the way she is because she didn't have her father, and Sue is the way she is because she didn't have her father. Sue was rebellious, Lynn was more like doing what she felt she had to do, but bottling up her feelings, and they've only come out now. But you can see the issues at play, and in that sense, like they've done Lynn really, really well as a character, in that, like, she's fairly dislikable when you first are introduced to her back in book 1, and it takes until, like, episode, like, 6, 7 onwards in book 1 to really get behind her. And then, like, book 3, they really give her the emotional arc to get behind her. Obviously episode 10 in book 1 was a very powerful moment, and then here's her, like, big book 4 moment, and it just means that I think without using her, like, an incredible amount in terms of important roles, they've really formed her into a character you actually care about a lot. So that's a huge positive for the series, that they've managed to do what is effectively, a very good sort of, like, minor main character, like that kind of middle ground between, like, she's not always the biggest character, but she's someone that you're meant to care about, and they did that really well in this episode, with just Toph just kind of in the end saying that, look, I admit I wasn't the best mother to you, but somehow, like, I ended up with 2 amazing daughters who turned out better than I ever could have hoped. I can be happy if you just find a way not to hate me. It's Toph kind of opening up as much as Toph can, kind of saying that, like, I want to have a relationship with you. I'm aware we're not just going to be able to get past this immediately, but starting with the just not hating is going to be our way to kind of reach the full recovery, and I think that's fine. Will they come back to this? I'm not really sure, because the comics feel like they're more focused on trying to tell their own individual stories, more so than just kind of resolving stuff from the previous series. But it's always something they can use. They can always have Toph return if they need to, and that's really, really good. As for, like, Toph's appearance in the rest of the series, she's involved in the rescue attempt, of course, but she's kind of like rescue attempt only. She doesn't want any involvement in any sort of a, like, crazy plan to suddenly take out Kuvira at this moment. She's just like, I want to get my family back, and that's it. That's what I'm here to help. I'm not here to be part of the, defend the world rescue team again. And just her mentioning at the end that it's the exact reason, like, my back hurts after all the stuff with Korra. This is exactly why Katara was not actively involved in the conflict in book 2. It's the new generation's time. It's the kids' time to do all of this. So I thought they really did use Toph well, and especially that moment where, it looks like Kuvira's army is overwhelming the Bolin, the Beifong family, and Toph comes in and saves them. It's just that you give Metal Benders a bad name, so that she doesn't agree with Kuvira, but she's not going to fight her. But it's definitely a demonstration of, like, here is the master, like, earth and metal bender coming in, and just the move that she does, I think they did an excellent job of just making it clear that, in a way, that's a move that only Toph, like maybe a Boomy or someone like that, could do something like that. Basically making this kind of localized kind of powerful earthquake that specifically like excludes the area where her family is, and it's just this perfect circle, but there's an earthquake that sends everyone else flying around it and shakes the entire area. Like, that's how powerful Toph is. And it's like, it's a way kind of showing she's still got it, but could she do that like in a one-on-one fight? I don't think so, but her experience allows her to do big power moves like that when she needs to. So that was really cool to see, and just, you know, moving past that was good. Then there's some fun moments with Toph, like Opal introducing Toph to Juicy, her bison, and just the whole idea of like, oh, I thought Opal was smelling, this is even worse. And a little bit of a story on like Opal getting Juicy, that like, okay, your bison chooses you. I tried to get it changed, but you know, you get the sense that she cares about Juicy now. Bolin, I suppose, meeting Toph was interesting just in itself, and how she kind of didn't like him, but then when he sort of revealed that like, oh, I've always wanted to be a metal bender, I'm actually a lava bender, she's kind of impressed with him. But again, there's more setup for the idea that Toph basically says to Bolin, if you get the right instruction, anyone could be a metal bender pretty much. That's what I've learned from all my years training metal benders. And it's more setup for the fact that like, wait, are you saying like Bolin could actually learn metal bending at some point? Are they going to commit to it? Because it feels at this point like, okay, like I'd almost like lost hope of that because they did the lava bending thing, so he doesn't need metal bending now. But then they bring it up again, and he doesn't use metal bending in the series. But will they come back to that at some point to give him an even bigger power boost? I'm not sure, because I feel something like that, giving a bender basically all of the abilities of earthbending, is that too much? I'm not sure, but it's a notable thing that they say it here, that he can learn it if he tries hard enough, basically, if the right person teaches him. And I sort of wonder, like, is that a case of like, maybe Korra could teach him? Maybe Korra is the one who will get through to Bolin in a good way. Who knows? Maybe Lin, maybe Toph herself giving Bolin a lesson could be what really makes the breakthrough. I don't know. But yeah, there's that. Bolin, I suppose over the course of the episode, he's, you know, you get to see the funny side of him kind of interacting with the family and kind of being the audience basically in this situation of like, here's the legendary Beifong family, here's all of their issues, and Bolin is the one to ask them the awkward questions because he doesn't know the full context and is just like, Lin, who is Lin's father? Like, I don't actually know, and it just, the answer kind of happens around him. He obviously makes himself look really goofy in front of everyone, as you expect, but you can see he's sort of back to himself. He's kind of gotten past a lot of the guilt around you know, choosing the wrong side, and how heroic he is in this episode I think gets that across with, you know, he's the one to catch everyone as they're thrown over to him, and you get this sort of you get the initial resolution with, like, I suppose Wing or Wei, I don't know which one it was, but just, you know, like touching him on the cheek, basically saying like they were very annoyed at him when he came in like episode 5 I think it was, and here is just his redemption to them. Similarly, I think it's the same with Sue. He kind of redeems himself to the rest of the family, but Opal is sort of like the holdout. And you can see that she like thanks him for once they get everyone to safety, more or less. But what really puts it over the edge for Opal in terms of forgiving Bolin is the fact that he wants to go back for Julie. That this is him putting himself on the line for his friends, anyone he's close to, and like not being willing to just let her be killed on the idea that like, oh, maybe she was lying about some other reason. And that was just the moment where he goes off on his own. He doesn't ask for any help, he just goes off on his own to save Julie, because it is kind of like personal mission. And Opal follows. It's just like, okay, it's the reunion of those two. They're going to get back together. And then at the end of the episode, her like admitting, okay, you're out of the doghouse, kiss on the cheek, that's it. Good resolution. I just wish, I suppose, in the finale, like the epilogue basically type stuff, I wish they'd done a little bit more, because it ends up that like their relationship dynamic in this season is more of just they've been away from each other and there's sort of been a unspoken almost breakup between the two of them because of the differences in opinions on this thing. They get back together, and then they just stop. Like, Bolin said the I love you, but do we ever see Opal say the I love you back? And I think that would have been the perfect thing to do at the wedding at the end, just to have a little bit of focus of, like, here are some couples. Here's, like, Janora and Kai, like, dancing together. Here's Opal and Bolin dancing together, and you get a little scene with each of them. They don't do that, and I think it's a missed opportunity. We'll get to it in the finale, but just the lack of, I suppose, a further scene beyond this to properly put it over the edge, I think it's just a little bit missing. So there's that. You know, the other scene with Toph I want to mention is Batar Senior calling her, like, mother, and he's just like, never call me that. So just a little fun thing of just, like, she doesn't seem to particularly like him or Bolin, but, like, it's just a fun little dynamic of classic Toph, of course, not being the easiest person to get along with, but that's fine. As for Julie, we get the full-on reveal here that she is not evil. She has not fully turned. She's working undercover to stop Kuvira any way she can. In this case, it's sabotaging the Spirit Vine weapon by sabotaging parts, removing parts, and she ends up in a desperate attempt to stop all of this from happening because Batar and Kuvira both get, like, super intense into making sure this happens. So it gets rebuilt constantly, it gets stripped down, new parts put in. She eventually obviously has to do something that puts her at risk, which is just flat out just taking a part out and having no way to dispose of it, so she gets caught by Kuvira. And you can sort of tell Kuvira was sort of suspicious of her the entire time, a little bit, but couldn't fully, like, make her mind up about it, but is caught eventually and is basically sentenced to death by, like, sent her to the town we're about to fire on. Pretty crazy. But she's saved, and at the end I like that she, like, thanks everyone. She thanks Bolin specifically for coming back for her, and she's the one to deliver the news that, like, yeah, Kuvira is coming for the city in 2 weeks, but we'll find out that it's actually a little bit sooner than that. But, you know, good information, and the important stuff with Julie is still to come. In the next couple of episodes, her relationship with Varric really, I think, puts it over the edge and really turns her into, I suppose, a really interesting character who is absolutely worthy of having the, like, position that she has in the comics right now, where she's being positioned as, like, the next president to be, almost, because of how bad Raiko is. They do that really well, like, just in the last couple of episodes, making Wu a little bit more competent, and then Julie's kind of transformation from kind of like Varric's sidekick into being a just really good character who stands on her own and has her own voice. So very good stuff on that front. I suppose the last big thing to talk about is the kind of Su Yin versus Kuvira fight. I like the action of this. I don't like how there's no character, there's no emotion to it. There's no sense of, like, this is mother and adopted daughter fighting. This is the fight that we've been waiting for like so many episodes. The emotion really is sort of taken out of this fight, and it just feels like another fight. The impression I almost get from the fight as it plays out is like, okay, it's a pretty intense fight, but it's more of just like, she would have had this exact same fight with, like, Aiwei. If Aiwei had survived and she had, like, a confrontation with Aiwei in, like, book 3. It doesn't feel anything more than that. This doesn't feel like she's fighting the person who's, like, stolen her son away from her, caused all of this damage, taken her hometown, taken everyone hostage, and is willing to do all of this stuff in the world. A dictator, a world leader type that Sue hates. It doesn't feel like any of that is present here. So this is where it really feels like the writers really missed an opportunity to just have some dialogue between the characters in this fight to get that across. It fell flat on that front, on the character front, the story front. The action was really, really good, but also getting across that Kuvira is able to beat Su Yin in this situation. Now, Su Yin didn't have her full armor that she would usually have. She had to sort of, you know, do makeshift work on it. Would it have turned out differently if she had went in fully prepared like Kuvira was? Perhaps it would have been a little bit more even in that Sue would have her proper equipment with her, but we don't really know. So yeah, I think that's most of the episode. It was kind of scattered, I suppose, the way I reviewed it, but that's pretty much everything. I suppose the woo bit at the start, he is the one to propose the evacuation, putting the people first over everything else. And Mako just complimenting him, like, that was a good idea. Everyone else being like, that was a good idea. And then Mako saying afterwards, like, you're finally turning into a king I could sort of get behind. So it's the start of Woo's development, and I like that it's only a small scene. They don't need to overdo the Woo stuff now. He's meant to be a little bit more calm, collected, and understanding. He's being invited to these world leader meetings. He has to make an impact, and that's what they're doing here. And we'll see further how much of an impact he makes with the evacuation and how it plays out. So that's in a good position, and yeah, I think that's basically everything. Yeah, the core stuff just ends with no help from the spirits, and you know, the Beifong family's back together. They're heading back to, you know, Republic City to warn everyone. Everyone's starting to come back together. A lot of the side plots are getting resolved, and we're laying the groundwork for what the finale is going to be. It's going to be in Republic City. There's going to be, you know, the weapon is going to be ready in some way, but how is it coming? That's the question. Like, it seemed to be very, like, built on the spot. How are they going to get that there? You know, maybe an airship could obviously carry it and drop it in, but then it's like a fixed position, but it's so powerful. How is it going to play out? And it obviously plays out in a pretty crazy way, but we'll get to that. Yeah, the next episode, I think, basically is when they properly get into it. So yeah, that's my review for Operation Beifong. I think one of the better episodes, with two problems. Obviously, the spirit stuff just not really going anywhere after this scene, and then the lack of any real dynamic, I think, being presented between Suyin and Kuvira, given that, like, Kuvira's entire motivation sort of relates to Suyin. You'd think that this would be a little bit better done, given that this is finally their chance to actually have a fight, and it just feels like a side plot fight. So I think they missed the mark on that completely. But yeah, otherwise very good stuff with Lin, the Beifong family, Toph, the Lin-Toph dynamic, Bolin redeeming himself with Opal. All that sort of stuff was very, very well done. So you know, highly rated episode, just lacking in a few areas. So that's been my review. In the comments, let me know your thoughts were on this episode. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.